It was 10:17 on a Thursday morning when I walked into my daughter's fashion office carrying a small box of homemade cookies, expecting to surprise her. Instead, I heard a sentence that made me stop behind the glass conference room door. Once we get her signature, we can finally cut her out completely. I froze. I knew they were talking about me. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. My hand tightened around the little cardboard box until the corner dug into my palm. Then my daughter's voice came through the door. Just make sure she doesn't find out until after the deal closes. I stood there, staring at the frosted glass, unable to understand what I was hearing. My daughter Emily was 32 years old. I had raised her alone after her father died when she was 11. I had worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, sold my wedding ring, and once spent 3 nights sleeping on a hospital chair because I couldn't afford a hotel while she was having surgery. And now she was secretly planning something with her business partners, something that required my signature. I should have opened the door. I should have demanded answers. Instead, I quietly stepped backward because suddenly I realized something. If I walked into that room angry, they would know I had heard them, and whatever they were hiding would disappear before I had a chance to understand it. So I turned around and walked out of my daughter's office as calmly as I could. I didn't call her. I didn't confront anyone. I drove home with that box of cookies sitting untouched on the passenger seat. And by the time I reached my driveway, I had made a decision. If my daughter wanted to play a secret game with me, I wasn't going to show her my cards. Not yet. Emily had started her fashion company 6 years earlier in the spare bedroom of my house. At the time, she had almost nothing: 2 sewing machines, 3 racks of clothes, a laptop that overheated every hour, and a dream she was terrified might fail. I was the one who told her to keep going. I gave her the $18,000 I'd saved for my retirement. She cried when I handed her the check. "Mom, I can't take this." "You can," I told her. "You'll pay me back when you're successful." She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I promise I'll never forget this." I believed her. For the first few years, she kept that promise. She called me every night. She sent me pictures of her first showroom. She brought me to her first major fashion event and introduced me to everyone as the woman who made all of this possible. I didn't care about being introduced. I cared that my daughter was happy. Then her company took off. Ornans multiplied. Investors appeared. The little business in my spare bedroom became a real fashion brand with employees, offices, models, photographers, and expensive advertising campaigns. And slowly, Emily changed, not overnight. That would have been easier to notice. It happened in small ways. She stopped calling every night. Then she stopped asking my opinion. Then she started saying things like, "Mom, you wouldn't understand how business works." I told myself that was normal. She was growing up, she was busy, she had a company to run. But there were other things. She began introducing me as my mother instead of the woman who helped me start this. She stopped mentioning the money I'd given her. And when I reminded her about the original loan, she laughed. "Mom, that was years ago. You know I took care of you plenty since then." I didn't argue. I had never given her that money expecting repayment. I gave it because she was my daughter. That's what made what happened next hurt so much. 3 months before I walked into that office, Emily had asked me to sign some documents. She came to my house on a Sunday evening. She looked exhausted. "Mom, I need a favor." "What kind?" "It's just paperwork. Our investors are restructuring the company." She placed a thick folder on my kitchen table. I looked at it. "What am I signing?" "Nothing dangerous. It's basically a consent form." I trusted her. I didn't sign it that night because I wanted my attorney to review it. Emily looked annoyed. "You don't trust me? It's not about trust. It's about being careful." She sighed. "Fine." Then she left. The next week she called again. "Did you sign it?" "Not yet." "Mom, I really need this." "I'll have my attorney look at it." She went silent. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You always have to make everything difficult." That sentence stayed with me because I had spent my entire life making things easier for her. I didn't know then that the document she'd brought me was connected to something much bigger. A few weeks later, Emily started asking strange questions. "Mom, are you planning to sell the house?" "No." "Would you ever?" "Why?" "No reason." Then she asked about the old property records. I owned a small commercial building downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but I'd bought it 20 years earlier for almost nothing. And over the years, the neighborhood had transformed. Now it was worth more than I could have imagined. The fashion company had leased part of that building from me for the previous 4 years. Emily always called it a favor. I charged her company less than half the market rate. I never thought twice about it until the day I walked into her office. After I got home, I called my attorney, Daniel. He had handled my property for years. "Daniel, do you remember those documents Emily asked me to sign?" "Yes. Did you ever review them?" "No. You never sent them to me." "I need you to come over." He heard something in my voice. "What happened?" "I don't know yet." He arrived an hour later. I told him exactly what I'd heard. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Do you still have the documents?" "Yes." I brought them out. Daniel read every page. His expression changed. "What?" He turned one page toward me. "This isn't just a consent form." "What is it?" "It gives the company a long-term option on your building and authorizes certain transfers connected to the restructuring." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means if you signed this without understanding it, you could have given them significant control over your property." My stomach dropped. Why would Emily do that? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Did she know the building's current value?" "Of course." "Then we need to know who else is involved." I thought about the sentence I'd heard. "Once we get her signature, we can finally cut her out completely." I suddenly understood something. The building wasn't the only thing they wanted. They wanted me out. The next morning, I went back to the office. But this time, I didn't walk in. I sat in my car across the street. I watched employees enter. At 8:42, Emily arrived. At 9:05, a man I didn't recognize arrived with a leather folder. At 9:19, another woman joined them. I took pictures of the license plates and wrote down the times. I wasn't spying because I enjoyed it. I was trying to understand what my own daughter was doing behind my back. And then I saw something that made my heart sink. The man from the office came out carrying a file. He walked directly to a waiting car. The driver was Emily's business partner. Marcus had been with the company almost from the beginning. I had trusted him. I'd even invited him to family dinners. I followed the car from a safe distance. It stopped at a law office. I parked 2 blocks away. I didn't enter. I simply sat there. For almost an hour, I stared at that building. Then Marcus walked out. He was smiling. I took one more photograph. That evening, Daniel called me. "I found something." "What?" "The company recently filed amendments to its corporate records." "What kind of amendments?" "They're restructuring ownership." My heart started beating faster. "Who owns what now?" "That's the problem." He paused. "Your daughter's ownership is being diluted." "How much?" "Enough that she could lose control." I was confused. If she's losing control, why is she doing this? That's what we need to figure out." Then Daniel said something that changed the entire situation. "There's another company involved." "What company?" "A holding company registered 6 months ago." "Who owns it?" He hesitated. "Marcus." I sat down. Suddenly everything looked different. Maybe Emily wasn't cutting me out because she hated me. Maybe she was being manipulated, but then I remembered her words, "Make sure she doesn't find out until after the deal closes." She knew, or at least she knew enough, and that hurt worse than anything. I decided not to confront her. Instead, I asked Daniel to investigate everything: corporate filings, bank records connected to my property, lease agreements, the documents Emily had asked me to sign, everything. 3 days later, Daniel called. "You need to come to my office." When I arrived, he had a stack of papers waiting. He pushed one across the desk. "This is a valuation report." I looked at it. My building was worth $4.08 million. I stared at the number. I knew it had gone up, but Daniel nodded. "That's not all." He handed me another document. It showed the fashion company had been negotiating to acquire the building for $2.1 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, because sometimes the truth is so painful that your body doesn't know how else to react. They were trying to buy my building for less than half its value? Yes. Who? Your daughter and Marcus. I felt something inside me break. I had subsidized their rent for years. I had given Emily startup money, and now she was trying to buy my property at a discount without telling me its real value. But Daniel wasn't finished. He handed me another page. This is where it gets interesting. I read it. Marcus had created a private holding company. The plan was to acquire my building, then lease it back to Emily's fashion company at a much higher rate. The difference would go to Marcus's holding company. Emily would lose control of her own company. Marcus would gain control of the property, and I would be pushed out completely. But there was one problem. They needed my signature. Without it, the deal couldn't close. That explained everything. The document Emily had brought me wasn't a harmless consent form. It was the final piece. I went home that night and cried, not because of the money. I didn't care about the $4.08 million. I cried because my daughter had looked me in the eyes and asked me to trust her while secretly trying to take away the one asset that could protect me in my old age. I barely slept. At 6:30 the next morning, Emily called Mom. Her voice sounded sweet, too sweet. "Hi. Did you sign the documents?" I looked out the window. No silence. Why not? I've been busy. You've had those papers for weeks. I know. Mom, this is important, so am I. Another silence, then her voice changed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Are you trying to sabotage my company?" "No, then sign the papers." I closed my eyes. There it was, not a request, an order. "I'll think about it." "You've always been selfish when money is involved." That sentence cut deeply. I almost told her everything. Almost instead, I said, "I'll call you later." Then I hung up. That afternoon, Daniel called. "We have a problem." "What?" "The closing is scheduled for Friday." My stomach dropped. "Without my signature?" "They're expecting to get it before then." "How?" Daniel was quiet. "Your daughter has apparently been telling people you're going to sign." I felt a cold anger settle inside me. They weren't asking anymore. They were counting on me. That's when I stopped feeling helpless. I asked Daniel a question. "Can I legally prevent them from using my name or property in this deal?" "Yes." "Then I want everything documented." We prepared a formal notice. No transfer, no option, no authorization, no sale. Nothing could proceed without my explicit approval. But I wasn't done. I wanted to know how far this went. So Daniel contacted an independent forensic accountant. Her name was Rachel. She spent 5 days reviewing the company's publicly available financial information and the documents we'd obtained. On the fifth evening, she called. "You need to sit down." I was already sitting. "What did you find?" "Money has been moving." "How much?" "Approximately $600,000 over the past 18 months. "Where?" "To companies connected to Marcus." I felt sick. "Does Emily know?" "I can't prove that yet." That distinction mattered. I didn't want revenge based on assumptions. I wanted the truth. Rachel continued. There are also payments labeled as consulting fees. To Marcus, to companies he controls. Does Emily receive any of them? No. That was when I realized something. Marcus wasn't just trying to steal my property. He was stealing from Emily too, and Emily may have been too proud, too frightened, or too trusting to see it. I called her. She answered immediately. "Mom, we need to talk." "About what?" Marcus. Silence. What about him? Do you know about the consulting payments? Another silence. What are you talking about? I knew then she didn't know. I told her to meet me at Daniel's office. She resisted. Then I said, if you don't come, you may lose your company. She arrived 40 minutes later. She walked into the office angry. What is this? I placed the documents on the table. She looked at them. Her face changed. What? She did. At first, she looked confused, then frightened, then furious. This can't be real. It is. She looked at Daniel. Where did you get this? Public filings and financial records, he said. She kept reading. Her hands started shaking. Marcus wouldn't do this. I said nothing, then she looked at me. Mom, I interrupted her. Before you say anything, answer one question. What? Did you know about the plan to acquire my building? She looked down. Yes, my heart sank. When did you know? About 2 months ago. I stared at her. 2 months? I didn't think it would hurt you. I felt tears burn my eyes. You were going to take my property. I thought it was temporary. You lied to me. I was trying to save the company by destroying me. She started crying. I thought Marcus was helping. Daniel slid another document across the table. Then you should know this. Emily read it. Her face went white. It was an internal agreement showing Marcus's plan to acquire controlling interest in the fashion company after the property transaction. Emily whispered, he was going to take my company. Yes, Daniel said. She looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? I almost laughed. Because I didn't know if you were part of it. Her eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. I didn't answer. She cried harder. I was so stupid. You were my daughter. I still am. I looked at her for a long moment. That doesn't erase what you did. I know. For the first time, she didn't defend herself. She didn't blame me. She didn't say I was overreacting. She simply sat there and cried. But the story wasn't over. Marcus still believed the deal was happening, and that gave us one final opportunity. Daniel suggested we let the scheduled closing proceed as planned, not to sell anything, to expose the deception. On Friday morning, Marcus arrived at the law office expecting to finalize everything. Emily went with him. I arrived separately with Daniel. Marcus smiled when he saw me. I'm glad you decided to cooperate. I looked at him. I haven't agreed to anything. His smile disappeared. What? Daniel placed the formal notice on the table. No transfer is authorized. Marcus looked at Emily. What is this? She didn't answer. He turned back to me. You're making a huge mistake. No, I said quietly. I made one 6 years ago. What mistake? Trusting people who thought kindness meant weakness. The room went silent. Then Daniel handed the attorneys the financial records. Marcus's face changed. He started talking quickly. These are misunderstandings. Rachel explained the transfers, the fake consulting arrangements, the undisclosed payments, the holding company, the plan to acquire my building. Then Emily spoke. I didn't know about the money. Marcus looked at her. You're really going to believe them? She stared at him. You lied to me. I was protecting the company. You were stealing from me. I was fixing problems you created. That sentence exposed him because it wasn't about protecting her, it was about controlling her. The attorneys immediately halted the transaction. Within days, Marcus was removed from the company. An independent investigation began. The financial records were turned over to the authorities and the company's board. Marcus's own documents became the evidence against him. And Emily? She had to face the consequences too. The investors forced a restructuring. She lost her position as sole decision-maker. For a while, she wasn't even allowed to approve major financial transactions without oversight. It was humiliating for her, but she accepted it. She also repaid every dollar she had borrowed from me, not because I demanded it, because she said she needed to. She transferred the money into my account and came to my house. She stood on my porch for several minutes before knocking. When I opened the door, she was crying. I don't expect you to forgive me. I didn't say anything. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I looked at my daughter, the little girl who once slept beside me when thunderstorms frightened her, the teenager who used to leave handwritten notes on my refrigerator, the woman who had hurt me more deeply than anyone else ever had. I forgive you, I finally said, her eyes filled with tears. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. I know, you have to earn my trust again. I will, she nodded. Then she handed me a small envelope. Inside was the original check I'd given her 6 years earlier, a photocopy. She had kept it. On the back, she had written something. I read it. Mom believed in me before anyone else did. I looked at her. You kept this? Every day. That was the moment I finally understood something. My daughter hadn't stopped loving me. She had become lost. Pride, ambition, fear, the wrong people. None of those things excused what she did, but they explained it. Over the next year, Emily rebuilt her company. This time, she did it differently. She hired an independent financial controller. She brought in a board. She stopped mixing family and business. And most importantly, she started treating people differently. She didn't ask me to invest again. She didn't ask me to work for her. She didn't even ask me to come back to the office. Instead, she started visiting me every Sunday. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we'd drink coffee at the kitchen table, just like we had before everything changed. It took time, a lot of time, but eventually, something happened I never expected. One Sunday, Emily looked at me and said, Mom, I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. I smiled. What? That success means nothing if you have to become someone you don't recognize to keep it. I didn't give her a speech. I simply said, I'm glad you figured it out. As for the building, I never sold it. I renovated the upper floors and rented them to small businesses. One of those businesses was a young designer who reminded me of Emily when she was starting out. She couldn't afford the market rent, so I gave her a discount. Emily found out and laughed. You're doing it again. Doing what? Helping someone who thinks she's going to change the world. I smiled. Maybe she will. Then Emily looked at me. Just don't give her your retirement money. We both laughed. It was the first real laugh we'd shared in a long time. Today, the building is worth more than it was when this all started. But I don't think about the money anymore. I think about that Thursday morning. The box of cookies, the frosted glass door, and one sentence that changed everything. Once we get her signature, we can finally cut her out completely. Back then, I thought those words meant my daughter had chosen to destroy me. In the end, they forced all of us to confront the truth. I learned that love doesn't mean ignoring betrayal. I learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. And I learned something else that took me far too long to understand. Being a mother doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left of you. I had spent years believing my worth came from what I could give, my money, my house, my time, my sacrifices. But that day, standing in that office hallway, I finally realized I was allowed to protect myself too. I didn't destroy my daughter's company. I didn't ruin Marcus. I didn't need to. I simply refused to sign away my life for people who believed I was too trusting to fight back. The truth did the rest. And now, when I walk past that fashion office, I don't feel angry anymore. I feel proud, not because I won, but because I finally learned that sometimes the strongest revenge isn't taking something from the people who hurt you. It's refusing to let them take anything else. My daughter and I aren't the same as we were before. Maybe we'll never be. But we're honest now. And strangely, that honesty feels better than the perfect relationship we pretended to have before, because this time, when Emily tells me she loves me, I know she means it. And when I tell her I love her, she knows that love doesn't mean I'll ever again allow someone to use my kindness against me. That Thursday morning, I walked into my daughter's office, thinking I was bringing her cookies. I walked out knowing the truth, and for the first time in my life, I understood that protecting my own dignity wasn't selfish. It was necessary. That was the day I stopped being afraid of losing my daughter because I finally realized something. I could love her without losing myself, and for the first time in years, I finally felt free.